most recent proposal from the WNBA that stood out to me, and that was this. It said players on rookie contracts who are first or second team all league become eligible to sign max contracts in their 4th year. And honestly, you guys, this changes everything when it comes to those max contract salary players starting to clearly see which players do not want a strike to happen and which players are leaning more towards like, can we just sign a deal soon? Like, it's looking like this deal is pretty good. Can we get this signed? And it seems like a lot of the younger players are the ones who are coming out and saying like, we want to get back on the court. So Sportico was actually at Unrivaled for their like media availability, and they interviewed quite a few players. So Paige Bueckers was one of the players.
The Indiana Fever have 3 players who will all become max contract eligible within the same 2-year window, and the WNBA's proposed salary structure only has room for 1. That single math problem is sitting at the center of the most dangerous moment in women's basketball history. We are 1 week away from March 10th, 2025, the deadline that determines whether the WNBA's historic momentum keeps building or gets swallowed by a labor dispute no one can afford. The players are demanding 26% of gross revenue and a $9 million salary cap. The league countered with net revenue sharing and a $5.75 million cap. After a full year at the table, both sides are further apart than the numbers even suggest. And buried inside the league's latest proposal is a single clause that just made the Indiana Fever's roster decisions infinitely more complicated. If you've been tracking this CBA situation and something hasn't been adding up, hit that like button right now, because what we're about to unpack is the part of this story that almost nobody is covering correctly. And the Fever are sitting at the exact center of it. Here is where the real leverage hides. The WNBA's latest proposal includes language that sounds like a minor win for players until you map it against actual rosters. Under the new offer, players on rookie contracts who earn first or second team All-WNBA honors become eligible for max contracts in their 4th year, not their 5th. 1 year earlier, that single year of accelerated eligibility is being celebrated in some corners as a player-friendly concession, and on paper, it is. But pair it with the second half of the same proposal, that each team can only carry 1 max contract under the new salary structure, and you start to see the trap it creates. The younger players in these negotiations are starting to make their positions clear. The voices saying, let's get this signed and get back on the court, are growing louder, and they're coming almost entirely from players who have the most to gain under the new max eligibility timeline. They see the window. They want to move through it. The question is whether the rest of the union is willing to walk through it with them. At the Indiana Fever, here is how the math actually plays out. Kelsey Mitchell is already a veteran eligible for a max deal. She has been the backbone of that franchise through seasons when winning was almost beside the point, showing up, scoring, and staying loyal when loyalty wasn't rewarded with winning. Aliyah Boston enters her 4th year in 2026. Under the accelerated eligibility clause, if she earns all WNBA honors, she qualifies for a max contract the same offseason Mitchell does. And then there is Caitlin Clark, who becomes max eligible in 2020 under this same rule. 3 players, 2 years, 1 roster slot at the max.
Only 1 player currently, with how the salary structure is, could get that max contract. So this is where it really starts getting sticky with some of these teams if players' goal is to be that max contract salary player, because as of right now, there's only room for 1 of those players on every single team. Only 1. So with the Indiana Fever, who do they offer that max salary to? Do they offer it to Kelsey Mitchell, someone who's been a veteran in this league, but maybe has less years to go before she retires? Or do you sign somebody like Aliyah Boston and try to keep her, and she's a younger player and she has the potential to be with that franchise for many.
Only 1 team slot exists for that top-tier salary on every franchise in this league. And for the Fever, the question of who gets it is not theoretical. It is the decision that defines the franchise's entire roster construction philosophy for the next 5 years. Do you commit to a veteran who built this program? Do you lock in the young defensive anchor who just entered her prime? Or do you clear space for the most marketable player in women's basketball? The Fever's front office does not need us to tell them what the answer ultimately is. Caitlin Clark is the most recognizable player in women's basketball. She fills arenas across the entire league, not just in Indianapolis. She drives television ratings, merchandise revenue, and sponsorship conversations that were not happening 3 years ago. Clearing max space for her in 2027 is not a debate. It is a financial certainty, but that means Kelsey Mitchell, who chose to stay when staying was hard, and Aliyah Boston, one of the most complete young bigs in the sport, become collateral damage of a salary structure that was never designed with team depth in mind. Those are exactly the kind of mid-tier players who do not have the leverage to force a resolution at the bargaining table. Their futures get squeezed when the numbers stop working. Which player would you keep if you were running the Fever right now? Mitchell? Boston? Or are you already holding roster space for Clark's max in 2027? Drop it in the comments. Because the decision Indiana makes under this one-week deadline is going to set a precedent for how every team in this league handles its own version of this exact problem. Now let us talk about what 7 days of free agency actually means in practice. Under normal conditions, free agency runs for weeks. Agents work multiple markets simultaneously. Players evaluate destinations with full information about salary structure, team dynamics, and long-term fit. What is being proposed right now is the opposite. Sign a deal on March 10th, or even a few days after, and every free agent in the league is making career-defining decisions without the time to make them responsibly.
The reason why I'm a bit concerned that free agency is going to be so short, because the reality of it is even if the CBA got signed today, they're already so late. At this point in time in the year, the expansion teams would have already literally had their rosters by now. Most all teams would have had their rosters set in stone by now. We are already well past that date. And as we know, the majority of the players currently in the WNBA are free agents. And what we have also heard from many different sources is that many of these players are going to be signing one-year contracts. I personally do not think that
the compression is already doing damage before the ink is dry. Under a normal calendar, the Toronto and Portland expansion franchises would already be building fan bases, connecting their markets to the players who will represent their cities, and generating the kind of preseason buzz that turns casual interest into season ticket sales. Instead, both teams will not know who is on their roster until training camp opens. You cannot run a marketing campaign around players you haven't signed. You cannot sell tickets to a lineup that does not exist yet. And the players caught in that chaos will do what players in uncertain situations always do: sign one-year contracts just to buy time to assess the new landscape. Which means the 2026 season becomes a holding pattern. Rosters built for survival, not for winning. Chemistry that doesn't have time to develop. New fans who showed up for Clark, Angel Reese, and Cameron Brink in 2024 will have no reason to build attachment to rosters that look completely different 6 months later. Here is the fracture opening inside the players' union right now. Paige Bueckers, speaking at the unrivaled media availability with Sportico reporters, made it clear that younger players want this resolved. The league has momentum, and they know it. They want to play. But Natasha Cloud is focused on something different. She acknowledged the $200,000 salary increase in the league's latest offer, then pointed out that before taxes, in a market like New York, that number does not come close to solving the housing cost problem the proposal is supposed to address. Her concern is the middle tier, the players who have been underpaid for years, who see this CBA as the only real structural leverage they will have for the next 6 to 8 years. Both positions are legitimate, and both are completely incompatible with a 7-day clock. Then Kelsey Plum said the part that most analysts have been dancing around. A strike would be the worst outcome for both sides because the WNBA operates under a revenue share model. No games mean no revenue. No revenue means nothing to divide. That is not rhetoric. That is a financial reality stated plainly, and it signals something significant. The players who understand the economics of this league know that holding out is a weapon that cuts in both directions. The veteran voices who were most vocal about striking 6 months ago have gone noticeably quiet. What changed is not the principles, it is the math. If this depth of analysis is why you keep coming back, consider joining the channel as a member. Your support is what makes it possible to keep going 3 layers past the headline when the real story is buried underneath it. One more angle deserves more attention than it is getting. An ESPN executive recently described Caitlin Clark as a gateway drug for new fans coming into women's sports, framing the league's job as keeping those new viewers engaged once they arrive. The intent is positive, but the execution of that message is exactly backwards. Fans do not stay because a network tells them they should. They stay because the product earns them. The WNBA earned millions of new viewers in 2024. A rushed CBA that compresses free agency into chaos, leaves expansion markets without rosters, and forces franchises into impossible salary decisions under panic pressure. That does not earn anyone. Here is what March 10th actually decides. It is not just whether games start on time. It is whether the Indiana Fever can build the kind of stable, multi-year roster that gives Caitlin Clark something to win with. It is whether Toronto and Portland get a fair shot at launching. It is whether mid-tier players like Kelsey Mitchell have enough structural protection to be compensated for what they actually contribute. And it is whether the league squanders the most valuable thing it built in 2024, the genuine attention of a new generation of fans. Both sides have legitimate positions. Neither is negotiating anymore, and the clock does not care. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because the moment this deal breaks, in either direction, we are going to walk through exactly what the terms mean for every team in the league. Starting with what a signed CBA does to the Fever's timeline for Caitlin Clark's max contract. That breakdown is coming next.